reduce fees, but that provide
And then last question on that report, under the delinquent real estate account,
probably a bit higher than budget number 285. That is in fact
so you would agree with me that that's a higher collection. The treasurer's report, the deposits for Fulton account, approximately that interest income. And then under payroll related items, you have listed payrolls, and it's not been listed that way in any other.
Yeah, I was just trying to emphasize the difference between payroll items and then specific payroll deduction as in paid to salaries. So we're just breaking that down. Because that's what's coming out of the general fund, so it's a better representation of what's actually occurring.
And one last question was on the second under supplies, support services supplies. Last month it was listed about $550. This month as a negative $120,000. How that
difference you're talking about. We haven't received the item.
I was just curious because like I said, the balance last time positive negative 100.
Maybe
And once the time we got
I believe I so the board approved in May purchase consignment. That's probably what that 96 is. And so the reason you had the board approve what they did is because it was going to be line.
materials of all the so
So that 120 is still
they were very pleasant. It was. They had enough training and stuff inside.
questions?
Forward, I know this is in the, June, is the beginning in June, like, supposed to be voting the salaries.
That happens in the second pay in June. That happens all very quickly. Anything else? None? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? President's report?
First is pay to play for the 2024-2025 AASD budget. In light of the words and actions of May 9th, AASD Board's Finance Committee listing the 2024-2025 budget update charts and play agenda. Using any of those words and actions that night indeed moved the overdue window toward one or more any stakeholders. To my understanding, the PASD has been dutifully handling student sports-related pay-to-play type arrangements for years upon years. If that is correct, in past years, did any or all of that involve a specific PASD policy number? If so, what is that policy number? On the other hand, if the PASD indeed has in place no board policy that authorizes pay-to-play type arrangements for either the 2023, 2024, or the 2024-2025 school years, exactly why is that? Should one or more current PASD officials be investigated and held accountable? Talking involved here. Speaking of the 2024-2025 PASD budget, how much is it costing taxpayers to fully pay for our district's relationship with the Pennsylvania School Boards Association? Will or will not put that $4 amount figure in a full itemization of what those dollars actually buy from the PASD be made available to we the people at this time? As I began to research matters related to the PSBA and pay to play, I became aware of a number of PSBA related details about which I had been previously unaware. In addition, I began to see the PSBA as an entity which appears to operate as a change agent on behalf of the ideological left. It has been reported that Act 55, enacted in 2017, requires all school board directors to complete a certain amount of training. At this time, will the PASD board be willing to make the public aware of whether or not to date the PSBA has been the sole source of Act 55 mandated training received by the current PASD board school board directors? Since Superintendent Kepler did not answer my Finance Committee meeting public comment question that I posed to him on May 9th, I will now pose it again to the full board. Is any current PASD board director now willing to share just exactly what board policy numbers, if any, the PSBA makes available here in 2024 to the PASD that would be applicable to the May 9th, 2024 PASD Finance Committee meeting agenda issues throughout? The apparent confusion and contentious discourse displayed during that May 9th Finance Committee meeting begs so many questions, one of which was whether this pay-to-play issue is being groomed, so to speak, to join a list of other ideological issue strategies capable of moving the overdue definition as to just exactly what all should fall under the rubric of taxpayer-funded K-12 public education, capable of making ever more heavy property taxpayers' financial burdens, and also capable of casting those who oppose this relentless intolerance of any state as means who would selfishly deny poor children an opportunity to become all that they can possibly become. Anyone disagree? Facts of the appearance of the Pennsylvania School Boards Association as an agent of change on behalf of the ideological left. What do you think? Anyone disagree? As directors of the current PASD board here in 2024, have any of the nine of you reached out to Christina Borsalis, founder and president of the Pennsylvania School Directors Coalition? To my understanding, this new alternative to the PSBA, among other things, school board of directors in promoting common sense education policy both locally and across the Commonwealth. Also, I wonder if this new alternative would, year to year, actually save the district property taxpayers some money. What do you think? Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you, Mr. Quinn.
Answer that question. So I have, as far as I know, they are not authorized by the organization to offer training. They are working on that. I have some other things who are very good. Get that bill that was passed in the House to try to get people with the sole provider. If that will go in the Senate, that's just, well, most of the organizations do not. But, so I don't know what will happen, but I do want to know I have the agreement with them, and I do see other value in what they're trying. Budget is actually 2024, 2025 year. So I'm looking at the budget document. Page 9, since this is my first foray to this, some of these might be any questions. Page 9, under the number said, we have this. So when I go to the PDD Excel spreadsheet, we have this number. How to divide it by number of people. Yeah, it was last year's and this year's.
This year's was different, so I'm not sure. Get farmstead process is responsible for the county. They send us, or send you. It's also sent to the tax collections there.
So then I did get a report from the assessment office dated May 3rd, and they had listed an assessed value of $2,161,720,005. The number on page 11 was different. Was that Canadian page? Now it's May 3rd. Right. we actually collect 99 this year. Is there a requirement to do what we actually collect, or how do you route it to 97.4 cents? That was from your revenue report.
That was, like, almost like budget number two, financial report, take into account the 97.
Oh, you're not basing it on. You're basing it. So we've got 97 that you in your budget.
Their budget, 100%.
That's what that number is. And then taking, this is the last. So then looking at the final budget document we had before we get to, we were at 8.04% in unassigned fund balance. Now taking that out, the new document you gave us, we're at 7.95%. So then that takes us to that 8% threshold that we have to have in order to pass. So is that part of the reason why we took out that? Because in order to raise taxes, that's one, we have to be under that. And then if you're under it, no, I'm just trying to understand. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand what it still doesn't make sense to me, the tracking argument. Use the same platform or paying lunch. Trying to understand. When I pay for lunch, I pay for it. Anyway, I'm just trying to understand, like, to have that come down and under that 8% threshold. That bothers me. And it bothers me in state auditors report last year looked at 12 districts that did raising taxes. And then we disagree with these practices. That's not the law is to avoid increasing taxes if the district has available appropriate taxes, which we have. In the past, in the past market, using greater input of other taxes and use of those, not with base taxes in excess of. And that's looking at what we've done. The last 20 years, I've had a constituent send me the last 20 years of taxes. They started in 2003 and then have an assessed value about where our average is. They went from $1,200, 36 cents, 1,000, and now in 2022, they're at 3,000. Extra $200 a month. So I'm struggling with using our taxes so much every year. Last 20 years, we've not had 1 year significant taxes. So that we can keep our unreserved fund balance at the maximum we can in order to continue to raise taxes. Like, that's more of a comment than a question at this point, and I just want that to be the public to understand, what's going on in this philosophy. And I disagree with it, and I agree with the Auditor General's report from the state, and they are making recommendations to the General Assembly to make changes to how school districts operate. This kind of thing what we've been doing, has been frowned on. And I'm not excited to be a member of a board where the policies are frowned on by the state auditor's office. So that's the extent of my comment on that.
Anybody else have any comments? Just for clarification for me, Mr. Friends, it's my understanding that the only reason that we're raising taxes this year is because we're funding bonds that are coming for option 4. If I remember correctly, when we were in the auditorium, that we had talked about that we were at a net 0. We were planning to have a 0% increase. But as the presentation from the gentleman, we either have the option in front of us for 4 years of funding this potential construction or 7 years. And we as a board kind of collectively said we'd rather do it over 7 years. So this tax increase isn't to increase any funding other than to pay for construction projects that we as a board are planning to move forward, if I understand.
That is correct. Under Act 1, given the amount that we would need to increase our tax base by to afford the debt that we're looking at, the only way we can do that is to start early.
Okay.
So if we would get what the Basic Education Funding Commission has allotted to us, if they pass that, we would get an additional $2.3 million. If we even get half of that, so say we're not going to get all that because that's what one party's pushing and the other party's resisting that, okay? So say we get half of that, that's still about what we have done this year to raise taxes. That amount of revenue would have equaled that. So to me, I think it's just irresponsible to continue to raise taxes in such a high amount when we have the money that will be coming from the state, almost guaranteed at this point. We can be funding it just the same amount as if we had not done any tax increase this year. And I understand, I'm not pushing that we wouldn't ever do tax increases. I think that's ridiculous. We can't possibly sustain that kind of a philosophy. But it's just the overall philosophy of continuing to raise taxes when we have money to give our community a little bit of a reprieve, I think is wrong.
So I would agree with you. I'll ask one question. Mr. Clean? Yeah. Did you ever hear back from the state representative from the email you sent? I think that's the answer to your question, Mrs. Martin. The people that are paid to do this don't do their job. I don't disagree with you. A constituent sent an email to the state representative, his local representative, and asked, why don't you pass a budget before my school district has to pass a budget? That's been, what would you say, Mr. Clean? 2 or 3 months now?
We're going on months now.
He's paid to do his job, I'm not. I mean that's what I agree. I don't disagree with you, but the problem is we're staring down. The only way to do it is then we delay the project till so now instead of whatever this board may do, starting now, the first class to recognize any of that is the class of 2030. If we push another year, now we're 2031 with a potential of, I think, didn't we say it was something almost like roughly 700,000, about $1 million in inflation? Isn't kind of so that's the only reason why. I mean, I'm just giving you my honest answer. Hey, if the state comes through with that, great, you're able to go next year. But I think we're up against what we're always up against. The fact is, the guys that get paid to do them, the people, I don't want to say that, but the people that get paid to do this don't do their job in a timely manner. And I can't not do my due diligence, my fiscal responsibility, my whatever for this community when they won't get off their butts and approve it. I mean, Kayla, you're in the thing, right? Any reason why, or they're just negotiating?
They just added more session days because they don't think it's going to be done by the end of June.
And what's so hard about it, right? I mean, it's supposedly guaranteed money. Well, I mean, like that's the problem. I'm with you, Mrs. Martin. But the problem is we're held hostage.
That's what my argument was. If we only got half of it, which there's no way we can give less than half in order for them to fulfill the court mandate. It's just not. So there was a really solid reliance on that number. And I think that would have been prudent and would have been our due diligence to do that this year. And then if we're given more next year, fantastic, but we, at least, I mean, there's a reasonable reliance on half of that in order for them to fulfill the work.
Thus was my idea to try to go 4 years, because to aggressively fund the first year, hoping we could back out year 3, year 4. I'm just not in the practice of swiping my credit card, not paying the bill, right? And that's just where I'm at. So I don't want to belabor it anymore. Does anybody else have any questions? I don't want to, back and forth.
I would like to address a couple of different things regarding this budget. First and foremost, I know, and I don't want to speak for any other board members but myself, but I know I've worked very hard, and I think that I've made decisions based on all of the homework that I did to hopefully get us to a year 3 or 4 in my term 0 increase. I do not, well, first of all, I think we were successful this year. If it wasn't for, having to fund a building project, operationally, we would have been at 0. So I know the first 2 years of this new board, I think we faced a lot of criticism, but in my mind, I kind of had a plan leading up to this year 3 and this year 4, and unfortunately, a failing infrastructure necessitated a project which required a tax increase to fund it. But operationally, we did hit that 0 mark this year, and I'm happy about that. I'm unhappy that we had to do any tax increase. But to be able to reach a year 3, 0% operationally with this board, I think was remarkable considering the cost of inflation, which everybody is feeling it. I think New York strip steaks are up to $15 a pound today. Not that we serve that in the cafeteria, but I'm just making, using that as an example. We're hurting badly. But at the same time, we've managed to address, swimming pool and a host of other projects. We've worked on a teacher's contract, which has raises built into it every year. So, our budget is going to increase annually no matter what we do. We've also addressed administrative contracts, and we've addressed support staff contracts, and if I'm not mistaken, there was also an appendage in there where we addressed coaching contracts. So we were able to address all of those issues and end up at 0% operationally year 3 of this current, when I say this current board, I'm talking about that big election a few years ago. So, overall, I would say that I'm unhappy that we have to do it at all, but I'm also really happy that we were able to accomplish what we did with as little tax increase as we did. And I will criticize the Commonwealth for not doing their job and not having a budget before us before we have to make that decision. It's grossly unfair. And I'm going to go so far as to say it's grossly incompetent. At the very least, relieve us of the responsibility to have our budget done before theirs. If they can't do it, then they should not expect it of us. I cannot, in good faith, assume that we're going to get any increase at all, although it's likely when you look at, historically. But God forbid we should be wrong and assume that money is coming and it doesn't, then we're going to have some significant problems. I think using up our savings account to run the district operationally, it sounds great, and I think in times of inflation that everybody's facing now, everybody at home is probably dipping into their savings. The problem is it runs out. And we had this conversation with the first budget this new board did, and there was a real big push to start burning up some of that savings, but in 3 years, this year, that would have been depleted, and we would have nothing. Because we would be spending more than we're taking in, and that certainly doesn't last for any extended period of time. I was reading my notes, I jotted some things down, sorry. So, that being said, I would be happier leaving our savings alone, and should the state happen to come through with some extra funding for next year, and I think we've benefited from that once or twice before, then I would be more than happy to examine next year's budget and see what we can do. No promises, of course, but, if we should get a state increase, then, my vote is that we apply it next year. And hopefully we can do exactly what it is that you hope. Because that would be my aim too. I just aim to do it responsibly without any surprises, and waiting on the state or depleting our savings in my mind is just a really bad idea. So with that being said, my vote would be yes.
Does anybody else have any? Will you call the roll? Okay. Mr. Fritz, call the roll.
Jones?
Yes.
Koval?
Yes.
Watermill?
Yes.
Bird?
Yes.
Martin?
No.
Braden?
Yes.
Guy?
Yes.
Gilligan?
Yes.
7 yes, 1 no.
On to curriculum.
Okay, curriculum met on May 16th. We had Dr. Spagnola reviewed a name change from middle school club from Palmyra Drama Club to Palmyra Theater Middle School in preparation of a motion this evening. We also had a school novel approval. We reviewed a newly proposed instructional material in preparation for another motion this evening. There was no public comment. Meeting adjourned at 6:45, and the next meeting of the curricular committee is scheduled for Thursday, June 27th. And we have some motions. Okay, we have a motion to approve the curriculum committee items as noted on the curriculum consent agenda.
A motion on the table to approve the curriculum committee consent agenda as noted on the screen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Brady. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mrs. Dillon. Mr. Guy?
Okay, the Staffing and Administration Committee met on May 16th. There was a review of the 2024-2025 cafeteria food service budget and proposed lunch prices. There was a review of the 2024-25 Central Susquehanna Intermediate Unit Computer Services renewal. There was a review of the reimbursement resolution, and there was no public comment. We then had discussion or announcement on the executive session. So out of that, we have the following motions. Motion to approve reimbursement resolution for insurance at up to $20 million in the general obligation bonds. This is a roll call vote.
I have a motion on the table to approve the reimbursement resolution for issuance of a $20 million general obligations bond. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Gilligan. Any comments or questions or clarifications? Seeing none, Mr. Fritz, call the roll.
Koval?
Yes.
Watermill?
Yes.
Lieber?
Yes.
Martin?
No.
Braden?
Yes.
Guy?
Yes.
Gilligan?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
7 yes, 1 no.
I have a motion to approve the parameter resolution for the insurance of up to $20 million in general. This one?
Issuance.
Okay, of general obligation bonds. This is also a roll call vote.
A motion on the table to approve the parameters resolution, motion to approve parameters resolution for issuance of $20 million in general obligation bonds. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Gilligan. Anybody questions, qualifications, discussion?
Because I don't know that I was here, but what are the parameters?
We have our Brad Reynolds with PFM, as part of our financing team, so sure do a much better job explaining it.
Thank you. So the parameters are to issue more up to $20 million par amount of general obligation bonds. And in the resolution gives us some direction to us as to some minimum purchase prices, maximums, all the things that we need to make sure we stay within the compliance with state laws. Gives us maximum interest rates, everything that we've kind of teed up at this point in time, because we've got a lot of the disclosure documents done. Mike did a great job on the credit rating call. We're ready to go, and everything that we have in place right now would all stay within those parameters of a maximum rate, maximum amount of bonds, and within that, the range of purchase prices. Sorry to get too technical on it, but it kind of like gives us the details of which we're allowed to operate to do it. But I think the biggest thing for you is that the $20 million par amount of bonds is the maximum amount required.
I don't know much about the stability. The bond market is more stable, is it not?
Market's good right now.
Market's good
Market's
right
strong
now.
right now. Rates are really attractive, believe it or not. I think a lot of people think of the Fed and things of that nature. You know, we've actually are pretty good. We're below historical averages of rates. It's a strong market. We had a call today with the traders, and they reiterated that we have tailwinds, not headwinds right now going on the market. And the other thing I would tell you is that for a school district like Palmyra with your credit rating, a strong credit rating, those deals are going well on the market right now. So we're hopeful it continues over the weekend. We're going to access the market next week. This is the final step that we would need for board approval to do that, but we're ready to go next week.
Thank you.
And without the parameters resolution, we would be forced to set the sale date essentially equal to a board date. This parameters allows them to enter the market when it's best for us instead of picking a date in the future. Hoping that the market doesn't move between now and
We were just in the real estate market and interest rates were very volatile. So it's nice to hear that the bond market is not that volatile.
Municipal bonds, yeah, and that's what a lot of people hear about, mortgage rates, volatility, and it's just our market right now, and the market we'd be accessing is pretty strong, pretty firm right now.
Thank you for explaining.
Anybody else have any other questions? No, Mr. Pence, call roll.
Laudermill,
Yes.
Lieberher,
Yes.
Martin,
No.
Braden,
Yes.
Guy, Gilligan,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Koval.
Yes.
7 yes, 1 no.
Okay, finally, a motion to approve staffing and administration committee items as noted on the staffing and administrative consent agenda.
A motion on the table to approve staff and administration consent agenda. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Koval.
Some new staff, professional staff hires for you. Happy to report we're filling vacant positions very well. Some additional hires and professional transfer. I do want to point out and thank Mrs. Patty Early, first grade teacher at Forge, who submitted a late retirement. So she concluded here at the end of the year, and we wish Mrs. Early a long and healthy retirement. teacher resignation you see there. We have the tenure list before you tonight, retirement, contractual obligations, some resignations. Winter coach hire for the unified bocce we have, Mr. Danowitz. The items mentioned that were just reviewed in committee as well, the various contracts you see before you, and the acknowledgement that we're reading into the minutes the Act 44 safety report that I provided to the board at our last meeting. And then tuition student, as well as the MOU for tuition payment for a new hire.
My only question is the coach isn't a.
No.
I see lunch prices are remaining stable, and breakfast is remaining free. Has the state already come back and said that breakfast is subsidized again?
That's right.
And I also see some very good staff that have reached their tenure, so that's exciting.
Anybody else, any questions, comments? None, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Communications, obviously, email. This time I entertain a motion for adjournment. Mrs. Gilligan, is there a second? Second by Mrs. Zuber, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.
Recording stopped.
That brings us into buildings and grounds, open meeting.
Thank you, sir.
We'll hit the ground running if you're ready, Mr. Coble.
I'm getting it on my screen here. First item is an update on Buck Swank District Office renovations and relocation.
So we'll take this in various steps tonight, but before you is the most recent update from our architects, RLPS. You can see what they worked on over the last week and where they're headed, working on floor plans and documentation of the conversion of this space into classrooms. Mr. Dresch and I joined architects and engineers June 5th for a walkthrough of Buck Swank Stadium, looking at facilities there so they can make assessments, so they can continue their design work. And then again, reviewing and analyzing the facilities there that they collected on 6/5. So you can see the things that they're reviewing at the stadium, and then the phasing here, looking at the district office conversion to classrooms, and then the expansion, small expansion of the guidance area in the high school. So they're working, we'll be working with the borough to determine Buck Swank Stadium and any code issues relevant to restroom facilities. So that'll be on their to-do list. And you see site survey work here in the very near future at the bottom. Part 2, I just draw your attention back as a reminder on where we were with cost estimates. In 4A here, see district office location, they were at about a $3 million estimate at RLPS. The stadium improvements at 7.5 was their high-end estimate. So I just share those with you as point of reference as we continue to dialogue through these projects.
Dr. Kepler, was the high end if we had to do the extra bathrooms, so there's a good potential on that?
No, that would not include that.
Okay, that's correct.
Good question. So where are we? We're progressing nicely. They're in their design work. Again, that timeline showed going out to bid in the winter months, around a March 1 start of construction of this facility into classrooms, and a post-Memorial Day 2025 kickoff for construction at the stadium, because we have to get through the track season before they break ground. So that gives you a context of relative estimated budget and timeline. Another thing we want you to see tonight is, again, pleased with the work of Bearing Real Estate, who we've asked to be our realtor looking at properties. I'll enlarge this a bit so you can see. In essence, nothing that the administration would bring to you as a recommendation for a viable property for relocation of the district office. Either too small, not adequate, cost prohibitive, etc. But you see a lot of properties on East Main, majority of them on East Main Street. The property that originally was March 1st was provided to us, but that was the property that was already purchased or is in the process of being purchased by Weaver Sports LLC across from Indinet and also adjacent to Forge Road. Property on North Forge Road, North Railroad, and noted rental space in the strip mall near Flagship Cinema. So those are the items that are available in the market since we've engaged our real estate agent, Bob Barrett. So again, we thank him. He's sharing anything that comes on the market. He's on it and sending it to us. But again, nothing there that is something we would recommend to you. So we've continued to work on this plan. I entered tonight's topic with you really seeking 2 points for direction. The first one is, as we're going through this, we clearly have to move everybody from this current office to the new facility, regardless of where it's at. We are exploring the potential and see the advantages of doing some consolidation of 2 other departments. Currently, our technology department is in a classroom on the 2nd floor of our high school. If we can consolidate, have them have space in our new facility, we gain an additional classroom at our high school that is a significant need. The second department that I would recommend we look at consolidating, and is one that is most typically part of a district office, is our special education department. Our special ed department is spread out across the district. We have folks in offices at Lingle. If they were able to consolidate, we gain office space for social workers when they're in the buildings, for PA counseling when they're in the buildings, things of that nature. More importantly, we gain a classroom at the elementary level. Pine Street Elementary currently houses our special ed office. They have a full classroom with files, the special ed secretary is there, consultants work out of there, and our special ed director works out of there. Again, those are offices that are typically housed here in the district office. So between Lingle and Pine, special ed would consolidate. So seeking direction tonight on that, is that something that this board supports? And ultimately, the second part of that is, what's it cost? So that's, I think, sure part of the driver, is that the decision is not in isolation.
May I just, I'm sorry, add a correction. The special education, April, the director is at Lingle,
Yes.
so she is not in Pine. And so
Correct.
actually, you had mentioned it, the director is
Jill's
also
in
Pine.
Jill's at Pine, the secretary.
Dawn.
Dawn. I might be
So,
calling her Jill.
yeah. So we have, it's really spread across 2 different buildings.
Yes.
So I'm sorry.
Yes. But that there's a full classroom at Pine that houses special ed, where our special ed secretary is in there, consultants in there at times as well, that we would gain that room. So one of our main needs is classroom space K-12. By consolidating those 2 departments, we can gain that. So that's one direction we're asking for you. Are you supportive of that? The second piece comes down to we continue to work with Weaver Sports LLC as they close on the purchase of that 18.9 acres, continuing to work with them on how we can make that a potential, working through the best options with our legal counsel. But ultimately, where we're looking, that $3 million price point that RLPS had as a high-end estimate was for building. If we're looking at something more than purchasing a building with renovations, that price point may not come in at 3. We're finding that the building we can do at that price point, but there's going to be ancillary costs, land development costs, there's pavement, blacktop, things around that area. You know, I'm hesitant to give any type of number because we don't know that. We're continuing to look at that. Again, I don't think it's going to be, I don't think we're over 4 million, things of that nature, but we would be, before we continue down this path, we need to have some direction from the board as we continue to explore. Is that something you're looking at? So looking at support. So the consolidation, special ed and technology, we're seeking direction from you, and then a price point that will likely exceed the $3 million placeholder we have.
Can you remember what the schedule is that you were talking about? When would construction start on this?
Sure. I'll start by saying this. We know we will have to do some intermediary steps, that we will need to be out of here before we have a new location. So we're working through some of those plans. Construction, early estimates right now, March 1st, starting the renovation of this office, so that in August 2025, we would be able to open this classroom space.
We're gonna do August like right before, I mean, do we?
I would anticipate it going right up to the last minute, trying to open the school year for students in the fall of 2025.
We're gonna obviously do a liquidated damages contract.
I would work with our architects to see what they recommend there, because there's pros and cons on that. And sometimes you go with that in your bid documents, you pay a premium for that. So sometimes you have to be careful, pay me now or pay me later. I don't want them to weigh in.
That leads into my second, if we're gonna start construction on the stadium or whatever we're doing there, is the intention to use that for football season, or?
No, the intention would be, we know going in, it's a 9-month construction schedule at the stadium. We have to impact spring or fall. The recommendation of the administration for me is that it has to impact football. As I can work around 5 Friday nights where we work with LBC to potentially host home games for us. We work with the neighboring school to host our home games. And JV games, we would have 5 of those as well. Track and field is an everyday occurrence, and that's 3 buses. I don't have 3 buses to transport them for practice every day, let alone all meets away. So it would likely, hence why we would recommend starting that right after Memorial Day when the state track meet concludes, May 2025, June 1, 2025, with a cycle that would impact the fall 2025 football season.
Where does the high school team practice?
They currently practice right outside here on what is the middle school soccer field.
Do you see any impacts with that?
I've actually already been in touch with LBC. They were not able to commit to 5 home games, but they absolutely are willing to help us out. I've not reached out to any schools yet, but I might be looking at a Saturday afternoon game, that year.
So, just a couple things to just refresh your memory of, some of the timeline items. We are looking at the recommendation to look at moving the district office. Twofold, looking at long term. This office can function anywhere, classroom space has to be here in our building. So I think long term, it's forward thinking versus leaving it for a future administration and a board. Second piece is, according to our architects, they can turn this around and have space available for the fall of 2025 when we're opening our first of 2 autistic support classrooms here at the high school. If we were to remain here as a district office and build classrooms, they're looking at an additional year. It would be 2026 before we would have any space available.
So is your move out plan involve trailers, or?
We're looking at any and all options. Clearly we'll do what is most cost effective. We're looking at some telework options with a combination of workspace. We're looking at 2 classrooms right here. It's gonna be pretty loud to be educating kids. We know those folks might get an honor spot, maybe that's where we have some workstations. Might not be ideal for us to work either, but we can handle it more than students being educated. So we might have 1 or 2 world language teachers in a new space where they're traveling using the back of the auditorium as classroom space for March, April, May, into early June. Another option is trailers. We're trying to not have to go there. We believe we have options that we can attempt to explore before we're spending money on rentals.
I know this is sort of off topic, but one of the questions that you had asked was about consolidating the technology department with the district office as well. I know that we currently have a student intern program with the technology department. How would that be affected if we moved to technology?
It's a good question. Yeah, we would have to explore that. That is not something we've discussed. Potential of, ideally, if it's a student that can drive, we have students coming and going all day to internships and things of that nature. If it's not, we can look at options where we're transporting a student via district van. We can look at options to not curtail students' opportunity there.
That will also be the main hub. We still have technicians in the building helping students. That won't necessarily change just their home base and their office and their site. A lot more of that will help them during their summer work. We're bringing in large amounts of computers all at one time, and we put that up. This would be a way to do that off-site, to be better. But once again, we're not moving the technology department necessarily altogether. We need them in our buildings to provide services.
I know of students who have very much appreciated the internship program and how they've been able to hop in and out of the technology department.
Basically, what we're envisioning is a larger room for technology. Because right now, they got a challenge. They're on the 2nd floor of the high school. Their hardware is delivered in the summer on pallets that don't fit in an elevator. So they have to unpallet everything, haul it up individually or in carts to the 2nd floor, and they really don't have much facility to tear it down and do imaging. It would be one large room where they can do all of that type of work, have work hubs or workstations, but they would still have mobile help desks in the buildings.
Yes, I've seen that closet.
Yes.
Okay, so then back to you consolidating these departments, is that saying that we would need a larger district office? Is that where the increased cost would come in?
I mean, obviously, yes, the larger square footage, more costs. The building itself, we believe the $3 million price point is pretty accurate for the square footage we're talking about needing. It's then the ancillary things outside of that are the land development costs, parking lot, things of that nature. I mean, we have a rough estimate. It is that I wouldn't say publicly what that number is. It's not that refined to go there tonight. Continuing to work through that.
And is there any impact to students from moving the special education offices out of the buildings in which they're in?
No, I think it's an advantage to have April with her administrative assistant and her consultant all in one building. I think that would be very helpful.
No, I mean, I don't have any other thoughts as to why that would be a problem from what you've said thus far. I would be curious to know what the final numbers are going to be though.
I had the same feeling. My only concern was whether or not it was going to impact the interaction between special ed and students and tech and students. And as long as we don't see any deficiencies in that area, and there's still going to be tech people, special ed people, face to face with the students, then I'm on board with that consolidation. And same as Ms. Braden, I'd like to stay apprised of the numbers as it rolls along.
Anyone else? Any other feedback? Continue to explore.
Bill?
Next item we have, in working with Mr. Jones, the board received an email or written communication from our softball booster club. Previously, this was in board communications. Our intention tonight was to, we were asked to consider it as an agenda item, bringing it to your attention for discussion. With, for background, softball facility is listed as something to be addressed in option 4B. What that consists of is not determined. So there is plan to look at that facility as part of the second phase of our construction. There was some discussion about are there things that we could do sooner. So we're simply bringing that to your attention in discussion tonight. So just basically referencing what they believe is inequitable facilities relative to what's around them on this campus.
Well, are there any ideas of what you could do? Is the question asked? Is there any answer to that?
Sure. The big caveat in all of this discussion is land development. If doing anything would drive us into having to do land development, the administration will recommend to you that we wait, and it's all part of 4B. I would not recommend going through land development just for this piece. But it would be part of the entire 4B, because that's a costly endeavor and a time-consuming endeavor. For example, could you replace the dugouts? Potentially. But if pouring concrete slab size, we'd be told land development, then the recommendation would be to wait for the full 4B, which is again, 2026 design, construction, finishing in 2028, the whole scope of 4B, to give you that time frame. But yeah, if there were anything that you would want to consider now, it would be backstop dugouts. But a lot of that would be driven by land development.
Well, what about things like the rotting wood and peeling paint? I mean, we can address those immediately, I'm assuming, right?
We do have some challenges with the use of the facility. It is currently rented almost, not necessarily rented, but used just about every day through August. So finding time to not interrupt those and do this is something we can look at, but I'm not sure that we could come back and say we could get that done over this summer unless we had some windows of time that could be interrupted. We don't necessarily want to do that. Once we commit to somebody probably to use the facility, we need to stick to that. So that would be one of the challenges. But as Dr. Kepler noted, we can go through it and figure out and determine costs and issues if there's
Let me ask this, is it something that we would do in-house, or would we contract, or would it be wise to contract so perhaps the work can be done after hours?
Our intention would not be doing the work ourselves. I mean, if you were going to do something with dugouts, I think they need to be raised and reconstructed. They're in bad shape. They're rotted wood. We would recommend a concrete slab with block.
Well, yeah, but I was talking about addressing immediate needs without the land development part. I mean, rotting wood and paint, I think, is something we can do without. But I in all honesty, I haven't walked down to take a look, so I may be overstepping just a little bit in my desires here.
Yeah.
These things are built out of wood, they're not like block like the baseball?
They are not.
And I don't have anybody play softball, so I don't.
I was just there last week for like the first time. The rec league played there a couple games. I didn't go in the dugout, but in this guy's letter, obviously, I mean, it's just one porta potty, so that's, the concession shed wasn't open, but he says it has no running water. But there's no lights as well, so you can't put it after dark.
Yes.
I have a relative who just graduated, and I think she said a game or two they had to call it because it got dark.
Yes.
What do you do?
Yeah, so, I mean, those, the big items are clearly things that the board will have to
But,
consider in
like you
2026.
said, you know, if it's part of the plan, then it's almost like kind of just have to wait. But it's coming, I don't know, maybe just giving them an answer that you're on our, like, it's very important to us, you know, because it is noticeable, like, the turf and the softball does match.
Yeah, you're just, the big decision points for your board in 2026 when that comes to
And
design
like, I
time,
know,
or
like
lights,
the
turf.
softball pro, I mean, he says like they're trying to grow it and, you know, having,
My only question is
Bring
gonna
people
be,
in.
is do we run it, I
Yeah.
know when we first got on, right, we asked about it,
yeah.
and the answer, or not that it was, but we kinda got away from the equity thing because we have the same amount of girls' sports on turf as we do boys' sports, and that's what kinda got away. Do we run any risk of them Title IX stuff or whatever? I mean,
From a Title IX perspective, we don't believe we have a direct issue, as the baseball field is combined with field hockey. So male athletes and an equivalent number of female athletes are benefiting from that facility. Title IX is not a direct baseball to softball correlation. With that said, do we have a discrepancy? Absolutely, no doubt about it.
Well, in all honesty, I mean, I had brought up, you know, the bathrooms at the turf, which are new and beautiful, but not available certain times a year. And if I'm gonna make that an issue, then I'd be remiss not to make the Port Johns and the softball an issue too.
According
Yeah,
to Title IX, it also helps that we added girls wrestling this year, because that's an additional female sport.
I think we all agree with some of the deficiencies that
Yeah.
you noted, but
Just
some of
how
the
do
ones
you
that I've
move
heard so
forward?
far are probably not things we're going to be able to deal with, or we're something like, they are project related, so, you know, I think to the point we are trying to address it, or we have addressed that there's a deficiency, we have a plan roughly to address that deficiency as long as we move forward with item 4B. The question is, would the board want to see, or want us to go gather some pricing for some of the other things that are here that we might be able to do and bring that back? Or we just wait until we're able to take care of everything to get through there? We as the administration don't believe the field is unsafe for the athletes to fight on, but some of the items here are
I would like to see us at least try to address, you know, the cosmetic stuff. If there's rotting wood and peeling paint, I think that's something that I'd like to see addressed as soon as we can. And if we have to contract it so it can be done on a Sunday or something, I'm fine with that too. But I mean, that's something that I would like to see. And, you know, if there's insects, wasps, you know, the immediate stuff.
And there would be, not that there are never wasps or anything, you find them, I can guarantee that if there was anything, it's been dealt with. There's not a wasp nest in the dugout.
No, but the rotting wood probably doesn't go a long way.
No, once again, I can't, like I said, it probably was there, but I don't want everybody to think that we know there's a wasp nest there.
No, I'm not trying to scare anybody away from playing softball. That's not my intention.
If anyone would go down to the softball field, you would see a net that's about 30 feet.
Yeah.
And that was a result of a lot of foul balls going back for tennis play, which, you know, obviously became a hazard because the backstop that we currently have stops very, very few foul balls.
for me personally, I don't know that we can really do anything that's not spending money that's just gonna get torn down
Yeah.
in another year or two, if it's in, but correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that in any of 4B that we had near the budget to take care of what.
No, it would likely increase the budget, should the board consider grading that field, as it does slope from left field towards right. If you wanted a flat, that would be a cost that's not considered currently. Lights, if that's a consideration, 4B, that's going, turf, those things, if those are considerations, in 2026, those are not part of those estimates.
Like I said, I don't have somebody play softball, but I feel their pain, because I mean, it wasn't, that when they did the turf, baseball and everything, weren't they supposed to get lights? I
There was discussion about it, but never moved on that.
I mean, I would agree for you, it's for a future board, but I think it kind of goes to some of the overall discussion, right? I mean, if you're, I think this general board and community is trying not to create second-class citizens. I mean, it kind of looks and feels like we're creating second-class sports. I mean, if I was around, I'd be hoping to do it, but it's going to be past my chain a little bit, so.
How close is the tennis field in location to the softballs? Are they right beside each other?
Yeah, they're
So the new lighting system that we're putting in the tennis field, I mean, I don't know lighting that well, but is there any way to make a rotating, head that can go point on tennis and?
Tall enough, maybe, that's
Yeah.
tall enough. Yeah, because like you need them to be like, kind of like what's on like the lacrosse field.
aren't there baseball lights there but face the other way?
There's
Like,
only,
they're really
there's
close
that
to
one
the
pole for
there's
the
that one
lacrosse.
pole. I mean,
For
there's
the
one
lacrosse soccer field,
and
there's that one
it just
pole.
faces the other way.
Yeah, I don't think that would light the whole field.
Yeah.
No.
I know, no, it's great, no, it's a great idea, right? I mean, that's the bump, right?
We're adding lots of lights.
Because then the tennis players don't complain, right? It's like, those lights are way too high, I can't see the ball.
You'd be surprised at how bright they are when you live near them.
That's a good point.
It'll be better. The new ones will be better that are LED at the tennis. Is that what you're talking about, the tennis?
Yeah.
These LEDs will not have a lot of spillover. So, I'm not hearing this majority of the board giving us direction to go do something now, but to respond and say, we're looking to address these in 4B.
I think the same thing I would tell like everybody, right?
Or aware
Start
of the
attending
problem,
board
yeah.
meetings, start pushing for it. There's some addressment in 4B, but if you're not gonna come and, engage the board as a whole more than just once with the letters, probably, I'm just trying to be honest.
I would like to go take a look. I can't say that I didn't see it.
I'd like to see it.
It's pretty bad shape. That's what I'm, at least replace it.
I'd be happy, so I'm not looking to spend
Okay,
significant.
I think we have our direction.
Last item. These are.
See now?
Yeah. Public comment, Mr. or Mrs. Clee, anything for this committee? Mrs. Yo, anything for the committee?
Does the
All right.
district office have to be in Palmyra? Is it on the wall?
Legally, that's a good question. I don't know.
Because there are some other places I thought of, but I didn't know.
I would want it to be in Palmyra. Although it'd be wonderful to take a building off of the tax rolls of another district.
That's about that. Pay taxes to them, and keep just about. The bleachers, I thought they were gonna be this year, but I'm sure it's next year. Can we reinforce those student bleachers at all with any kind of metal? You're so creative, can we do anything? Because that just makes me nervous with those students jumping on them.
Well, the issue is bleachers are made to sit on. They're also made to not to grab the seats and bend back and forth. They're breaking aluminum planks. I mean, we do replace whatever we find in the beginning of the year, and then if there is one throughout the year, we try to replace it, but depending, I guess, who we play, what team, Hershey team or whatever, I think the kids get a little more rowdy.
Yeah, we assess them every summer. Mr. Reisinger might be happy he'll be retired by football season, because I think it's gonna be more of an administrative task to just try to keep kids. If you stand on the section of bleachers you're to stand on, I'm comfortable. It's standing on the seat portion, they're not constructed to.
So we should take Queen off the playlist. The one thing we can do right now.
And they are inspected every summer by an outside company.
That's it? All right, well, that's it for public comment, and that concludes building and grounds.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the 24-25 school physicians of record agreement. Department Valley Family Medicine.
So this is just a yearly agreement that we approved, and this is for the school physician of record. This individual will not necessarily interact with athletics. We have an athletic physician, that is not this individual. use, Dr. Blueball as well as Valley Family Medicine. There's no change in the contract from last year.
Any questions on the agreement? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the second agenda item, 24-25 high school football service agreement with First Aid and Safety Patrol.
This is another yearly agreement. This is for the ambulance service for our football games. There was an increase in this contract of about $390 from last year.
That's all.
Yes.
Is that a typical increase each year?
I think they've been trying to hold prices for us, not necessarily each year, but we have seen increases. They try their best to hold it as much as they can. I believe they held it last year. So this is a little bit larger increase, but if you look at it as a 2-year increase.
Was the fact that we dropped 7th, 8th grade football a help in that? Or are we still in the same amount of games? It seems like we're only doing 5 non-varsity, 6 varsity, and I know 7th, 8th grade had at least another, so I mean, it probably helped. I was just curious.
I have to look back at previous contracts.
Yeah, I don't believe for whatever reason, I don't know how they dealt with the 7th and 8th grade, but the contract last year only listed varsity and JV.
Any additional thoughts on the service agreement? So this would come to us at the next regular board meeting?
Yes.
All of these would come?
Yeah, that's correct.
So the third item on the agenda would be the 24-25 liability insurance renewals.
And this is a recommendation, very pleased with how this process set out, attached over as part of the budget discussions we had earlier in the year. The board had asked us to take a look at consultants that we may have. And when's the last time maybe we have challenged pricing and done something like that? As part of that process, we educated the board that a lot of consultants we have don't necessarily have the ability to change. We have consultants for our EHCC medical insurance, but that's through a pool, that's through a consortium. We really don't have the ability to change that individual. So the one we do is our liability insurance. Liability insurance also includes workers' compensation insurance, student accident insurance, cyber, those types of things. So we currently work with the broker, John Zinn, Zinn Insurance, in which he is essentially the conduit, our individual to get us insurance through the underwriter, which currently is CM Region. Had another individual through Arthur J. Gallagher asked to provide pricing as well, in which he provided for Utica. In the first iteration of this process, CM Region's prices were much higher than Utica's. And I was going to make the recommendation to switch to Utica with Arthur J. Gallagher. In meeting with John Zinn, Zinn Insurance, who subsequently negotiated with the insurance carriers, they reduced their premiums. So we are looking, we had budgeted for about an 8% increase in this line item, which is historically our average. We're looking at about a 4% decrease in those costs through going through this process. So the first thing I've highlighted at the top is our workers' comp. That is currently through Eastern Alliance. We will be making a switch to use UPMC for that process. As you can see, there's a savings from the yearly premium. I've worked with this UPMC insurance as well before at other districts, and I find it is very helpful in terms of they do a better job than most at investigating workers' comp items and really pushing back to determine if it's something that should be covered or not.
Well, that they do.
That's good on the employer side to make sure that we're being taken care of and watched out for from there. So I believe that'll be an overall improvement with a decrease in cost. Dr. Kepler, if you could just scroll to the bottom. We have various insurance coverages. What I have noted there as highlighted is the total for all of those. So you can see CM Regent, last year's premiums were just a little over $206,000. Through the negotiations that Mr. Zinn was able to do, we were able to get that premium down to a little over $198,000 this year. And that really goes to show how this process worked, because for the most part, liability insurance, specifically after COVID, has been increasing mostly due to property values. So a lot of liability insurance is replacement of a building, replacement of, well, since inflation, those buildings are more costly to replace. Thus, our insurance premiums go up so that the insurer can gather the necessary money to cover their risk or liability. So we didn't do anything wrong. We are not more risky. Our premiums went up because of that values.
Are we investigating insurance company ratings and making the proper comparisons so we know we're getting the best coverage and the best service available?
Yes, those are something that Mr. Zinn is required to do as part of this process. So no, we are not providing those. That is something that he is well aware of as he goes through as part of this process. The other thing is, from a liability insurance perspective, there are probably only 4 companies that provide overall insurance. So we are not looking at the overall insurance market to be able to buy what we buy. There's really 4 companies that specialize in school district insurance in our area. And those are really the choices that we have. But it was good this time to negotiate them against each other and see the results.
Thank you.
Cyber liability does show an increase. That is with a company called Cowbell. Our current insurance was through Chubb. Through recent things I've learned just through our PSBA and PASBO organization about cyber insurance, became more and more uncomfortable with the coverage Chubb provides. We also had an issue, and it's a normal part of the process, that the insurer will try to hack us. That's how they understand if we're doing our job or if we're not, if we're more of a high risk. That is not unusual. It happens all the time. But we had issues with how Chubb operated that this year. Didn't share information with us until renewal. It just was a bad feeling. So I asked for a different response there. A company by the name of Cowbell is who won that bid. It is higher, but I believe it is a better insurance and better overall coverage if we should need to. I feel like I made the comment that I don't know if that $15,000 premium is really just making me feel okay versus an actual good insurance that we could rely on if we had any claims to go back. So increased costs there. And finally, AG Sports Insurance, that is currently the same. That provides accident insurance to our athletes, medical coverage. So what this helps with is student athlete. It also covers students in gym class at the district. But should they get hurt, have to go get medical care, and if the family may have, this becomes secondary insurance. So the family may have primary insurance, but they have out-of-pocket expenditures to deal with that. They can submit the claim to get reimbursed for their out-of-pocket expenditures through this insurance that we have for athletes. We carry this as a requirement as part of our policies.
You couldn't have told me that like 3 broken hands.
It is something that Mr. French brought back to the district that we once had years ago.
Yeah, we just instituted that last year. So this has not been in place for a long time here at the district. But yes, that's something I felt was a helpful coverage. I've communicated with a couple of families already since this process started last year to help them.
I'm still on Cowbell, I'm sorry.
I'm told it's just like that's why I'm not a farmer, so I have to apologize, but cows have a bell so that when there's danger.
He's going on the SNL, so more cowbell.
We need more Cowbell.
Do you know any other districts that utilize cowbell?
I did not ask Mr. Zinn for that.
Okay, I was just curious if other districts have had good experience with that.
That's why I asked about the ratings, but I just
Yeah.
couldn't finish the meeting without ratings. Sorry, I had very little restraint, I apologize.
Any other comments, questions, people not feeling comfortable moving forward with the current insurance providers? Thank you for your. All right, the next item on the agenda would be 2024-2025 special education contracts.
And these are just, not all, but most of our, these are all, the special education contracts, replacement services for students for next year. To their, bring these to you as well during, throughout the school year, as students may come and need additional placements when those arise.
Was there a significant increase in the Fair Abilities contract from last year?
Cost increase? No, we obviously increased some services because the number of students were receiving.
Right, but as far as their rates and things like that, no, it's the same.
Are those two placements that Yellow Breach is spoken for?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we see a need to have additional placements available, or has it been easy to get kids into when we need?
We are able to reach out and get placements. One of the reasons we don't do that is because you pay regardless if you're using it. So it's better to reach out as we need it rather than to say, let's pay and not use it.
Okay, as long as there's no difficulty getting the placement. if we
It's
need
not
it.
in this, there's other placements. We have multiple options for students when we need to have a place.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the special education contracts? All right, next item on the agenda, 24-25 PA counseling services contract.
We're continuing our relationship, having the school-based counseling in all of our schools this year. Or for next year, some of that is at no cost to us, but then we did a number of years ago, we continued it now with the district providing some additional services to our students, especially those with some private insurance, that this allows some of those students to start getting services after so long ago they're referred out. That this will help with the mental health needs in all our buildings. I think we've been able to show that it's very beneficial. We are filling up at all the buildings this year.
And just to review for clarification, the PA counseling services are elected by the students' families.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Any additional questions on PA counseling services contract? All right, next item on the agenda, update to the 24-25 transportation contract, AP bucks.
So I have an update there that we continue to talk to AB Bucks about the renewal for the 2024-25 agreement, but I do not have anything currently check the ship on.
What is the timeline for that, Mr. Prince, that we would actually be under contract with them typically?
Typically, we've gone a little later. We attempted to try to push the process, but last year we didn't have a contract done until July. Because I would have liked to have the contract done before that time, but so we probably at that same time frame.
All right, thank you for the update. Any additional comments? All right, then the last item on the agenda would be public comment. Mr. and Mrs. Please? No?
First of all, I have no idea what property terrorism would mean, you know what I mean? I don't know if that's been explained or not, but.
For the insurance policy?
Like, under B, 3B,
liability insurance.
Property terrorism. I thought that was an odd phrase.
The phrase used is terrorist act insurance.
Right, so it's just damage to the real estate, the hard property due to terroristic activities or?
That could also cover bodily, other issues or costs, things that may arise from a possible terroristic attack.
And in regards to errors and omissions, here, everything since, in my mind, everything since May the 9th has touched upon without anybody really talking much about policy 122, which is the policy in regards to extracurricular activities and everything like that. And here, to my understanding, although it was hard for me to understand all that was going on May the 9th and what the implications were, what some of the people were saying. But anyway, here, in regards to policy 122, if things would go wrong, okay, so to speak, and something happened because of injuries or anything that would happen, here, would errors and omissions be the place that would address failures of the board to have in place a proper policy or a proper content or wording of the policy, okay? So if 122 didn't do whatever you guys thought it would do, if something would happen in regards to pay to play and everything like that, would errors and omissions be where any insurance claim concerning that is that where that would go?
I don't know that I can give you a good answer for that, Mr. Klee, because especially liability insurance is fairly dependent on the facts and the issues that are actually at hand. So providing an estimation like that, and I can't even fathom something that would come up from that issue, whether or not that would be there. All I can note is this: all of these insurance act like an umbrella to protect us from there, and that's part of our insurance broker's responsibilities to help us determine which bucket that fits in when we have an issue.
122 is to protect us, isn't it, in ways from liability? Is that one of the purposes of 122?
You're a little off topic for me, so I don't know how that pertains to what we're talking about. So I don't know that.
Well, are you mean what policy number 122?
Yeah, policy 122. Because it all ties into if I'm correct, I'm not sure, but I think I am correct. Okay, then that would definitely try to do errors and omissions. To my understanding, errors and omissions is where that kind of, and I thought on May the 9th, if the issue was raised as of whether or not we had a proper policy in number 2, would 122 really be what we needed to be given everything that was being talked about on May the 9th?
122 is extracurricular, not
Right.
LA-related activities, so they would be separate.
But May the 9th expanded to a lot of areas, didn't it?
Mr. Prince, is there any way you could get, because in my world, the errors and omissions insurance is on design. So like mine's like I do a design for a fire protection system. I carry errors and omission insurance in case I applied the code wrong or I misinterpreted something wrong and there was an event of that. Could you just maybe just get us clarification?
I think that might fall along with some of the things with what we do if the loss or the issue at hand resulted in a loss that was because we made an error or omitted something from our process, we may be able to go back to that. But once again, I am not comfortable answering this.
No, that's what I was saying. If you could just reach out and get clarification from our insurance agent or whatever, what this particular errors and omissions insurance.
I can definitely.
That's what I was doing. Yeah,
provide a presentation.
Thanks for clearing. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. You just want to know, do we need it, and is it something, or what bucket does it fall?
Is errors and omissions covering it? I was reading whenever I was talking, when I was reading about this other competitor here, I read where a district in the Commonwealth adopted a policy that was proposed by PSBA, okay, and it was going to shield them from liability, and it didn't, okay? And here, then, they were exposed to it, and it crossed my mind, if you're relying on like PSBA, okay, to say this policy and this wording is going to shield you, okay, and it doesn't, would that be a place that would go to errors and omissions because you did an error in relying on PSBA to say this is going to cover you? Oh, it didn't.
Yeah, I think we'll just get clarification what particular errors and omissions this is, right?
Yeah.
And then that way, at the next meeting, I think that'll just help. If you just, yeah, we'll get that for you, but, yep.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mrs. Yaw? Okay, that concludes finance.
Take it home, Larry.
Okay. Ever popular board policies, policy 246, wellness.
I would tell you, no changes since the first reading.
Okay, and then we have first policy readings, and you can see that, what's listed there. Make comments on those?
Mr. Guide, I'll take you through some of these actually out of order to a degree, but we'll start with 006. This policy change, again, recommended from PSBA Policy Services, one of the benefits we have through the membership there. This policy stemming really from a situation or case during the COVID years in an Eastern Pennsylvania school district that is not is a preliminary injunction that led to a settlement agreement. So it is not a defined court case result. But Peter Amuso was a school solicitor, Eastern Pennsylvania, and the case centered around did that solicitor shut down public comment and violate First Amendment rights. So that's the background of what's driving this recommended policy change. So when you look at, set my document aside, when I look at 903, actually is the policy I'm going to go first, is it's the driving force, and then we'll hit 006. When we look at this policy, and there are things outside of this case that PSBA has here as recommended changes for us. But ultimately, language is going to take us to very precise rationale for a presiding officer or solicitor to shut down public comment. Specifically, this changes the title of policy. It currently is named Public Participation in Board Meetings. The recommendation changes it to Public Comment in Board Meetings, as that is specific to what it addresses. You see items in bold are predominant changes. I'm going to try to highlight some of the key areas in red that to highlight for you. Again, taking the language out at the beginning of each meeting, and basically that the board requires public comment to be prior to any vote taken by the board on any motion, proposal, resolution rule, etc. So basically, before a board votes, public comment must occur before that vote.
That's from PSBA.
Correct.
So I'm looking at some of the neighboring policies before what just approved there in April of 2024, and they have that the board requires that public comment on agenda items made at the beginning of each meeting. They didn't change there, so this is curious if that's.
Yes. Part of this, I should note that the general policy before you tonight is from PSBA. However, based on the nature of it, Stock and Leader, our attorneys, Dr. Lee Dalton specifically reviewed this and made some of these recommendations.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
But in essence, before you as a board take action on any motion, you must allow public comment to have occurred. That language there in red ensures that. The bold items at the bottom there of page 1 provide specific rationale where public comment can be interrupted or terminated. And the key word there, limited circumstances. Just because a board or presiding officer doesn't like what's being said, you're not allowed to shut down that public comment. It provides sexual harassment, racial, ethnic, religious, or nationality intimidation. It's confidential personal information regarding the student or staff. Speech not protected under First Amendment rights. Speech integral to criminal conduct.
So you're taking out obscenity and defamation?
That is the recommendation, that a public comment could use an obscenity, and you can ask for order, but you may not shut them down, based just on that.
So that's from Stockton here?
It's one of our recommendations, yes, especially because obscenity is not defined.
Because it's what?
Not defined.
Item 5 constitutes a true threat, and or if speech that does not concern matters that may come before the board for deliberation. Off on a tangent on trying to sell something or a service, etc. Under guidelines, some of this information you see in red, these are recommendations of language. Some key things here to note that again, PSBA-related policy language, that your board meetings are for carrying out of official business, that they're not public forum meetings, but meetings held in public. They're open to public. The official meeting minutes record action taken. Again, it talks about spontaneous discussion from the audience. How an individual organization may provide information to the board through the request of presentations, proposals, ensuring that people who wish to appear before the board can be heard. Below is language specific to the Palmyra policy that would not have to be in here. I'm making a recommendation that it remain. How our meeting structure is, that's been in our policies. I do list here, our committees are of the whole. So we don't have separate subcommittees of the board, we are a committee of the whole. And we do add in here a recommendation to list and finance as necessary on the second meeting of the month. We traditionally, especially in the spring of the year, we have financial things going every meeting, the second and fourth Thursday. If it's been financial, it's been placed under staffing and administration. My recommendation is we call what it is. If it's a financial item, we have finance committee that night as well. It's on the agenda anyways, but under staffing, let's just call it what it is and put it under finance. This is a change that PSBA's policy is recommending. We currently seek the address of a constituent when they come in to sign in our board meetings. It asks for an address. The recommendation is it should simply say the municipality, that we shouldn't have the specified address of that constituent. There was a time, since I've been in the district 11 years ago, where an individual would register to speak at a public meeting, and on the board agenda for all to see, it listed their home address. Years ago, we got rid of that practice, but we've still requested it. But it's the municipality.
You need to add the word committee board meeting, so it's not worrisome that somebody tries to show up that night to speak at the board meeting.
And we'll get to that.
Okay.
The regular meetings come next.
Okay.
So this is for committee, okay? So they come in, sign-in sheet, we already have a draft revision that asks for those items that you see listed there in bold. Okay. Time minute, I'll just share this publicly, that we've maintained a 5-minute timeline. PSBA's recommended policy actually lists 3 minutes. I'm not recommending we take time away from our constituents. Recommend we continue with that 5 minutes. Here's the official board meeting. So again, 5 minutes.
But there you're asking for address.
And when they call in, that would be calling in and registering. That is not putting it on a document. It never goes on a document.
So on 006 though, you have it crossed off and you have municipality when they call in. So those aren't.
I will take a look at that.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out. But the big word there is this. To date, our policy says that a stakeholder Mr. Clee calls in each week of board meetings and registers to speak. Historically, we've said must. We need to move that away from must and are asked to call in. If a stakeholder comes to the board meeting tonight and signs in wishing to speak, the recommendation is they should be able to speak. It's an open public forum. The ask to call is out of courtesy, so we have a general idea of how long are we going, how many people are registered to speak, things of that nature. Can we fit in this room, or do we need to consider an alternate facility? But technically, the must is recommended to go away. That we provide that First Amendment right to the citizen that shows up at our meeting that night.
No, was that a PSBA thing or a stopping meter, or both?
I believe both.
Yeah, I mean, I think it originated with PSBA, but we somewhat agree. I mean, from an accommodation standpoint, individuals may not always have the capacity to call. They may not be able to call during business hours because they work during business hours. And uniformly, most boards will receive comment from people who ask.
That is a recommended change. Again, public comment, commenters can't cede their time to other individuals. They can't speak more than once on the same topic, can't sign up for multiple 5-minute time items.
Okay, we'll go back to that, you can't sign up multiple.
Yes.
Per work session,
So these are regular.
or if there's 3 of them.
This is in the regular, this is the regular voting meeting.
Oh, regular.
Yes, that occurs before you take action.
Okay, so
They get
just
5 minutes.
One topic, one sign up.
They might have more than one topic, but they get 5 minutes.
Total.
Yes.
I don't know, I wasn't able to read everything as you were scrolling, but going back just a minute or so, with not having to register by phone the day before and giving the public the ability to speak regardless of signing up, when, do they still have to sign up at least outside before the meeting?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So we can't be halfway through a meeting and then somebody makes a decision.
Correct. The intent of when, I think we do a nice job of giving our public comment folks, our visitor, you're at 30 seconds. You can terminate them if they continue beyond that timeline. Talks about calling a recess or adjourning to another time. That comment or conduct is otherwise in violation of the policy. You can request an individual leave that meeting if it goes to one of those items where you can cease that visitor comment. And school security personnel, police, if it would come to that. And this does talk to that, it's more of a reminder that these meetings are not in general, they're business meetings, not a Q&A. We have traditionally entered Q&A as a board with our constituents in our meetings. So the direction there, you can see the language that's recommended. Language in the policy that speaks to recording and release of public comment. Again, it's in a public meeting. We do have posted videos of our voting meetings until the minutes are released, and then we take those down and destroy those recordings, as they are not the official record. But the official record does have a list of public commenter and their topic.
Was this a recommendation from PSBA to make this change?
Looking at what the change would be.
You took off in accordance with the district's records retention schedule. So now they're no longer discoverable at all, is what the change is doing. What we've done, the records retention schedule has specified, and what we've done is, when the board, tonight you approved the minutes from May 16th. It has been a month. The
the video for May 16th has been destroyed already. So we're following records retention policy, specifying more specifically for Palmyra how we handle that.
So that's not a PSB recommendation?
Not necessarily to my knowledge. I'd have to
Yeah, I mean, I see it frequently. It could be a hybrid, but most districts are not retaining that amount of footage just because they often have YouTube accounts, they have other virtual forums, and it becomes a retention issue. So the majority that I've seen recently are doing that sort of same pattern, that at the time the minutes are approved, the footage is destroyed.
But those districts have other channels to have these things viewed. My concern is so say the public, we've had people in here recording. So if we don't have some kind of recording to say, no, that's not what actually happened, they alterated that recording, do you see that happening at all? Or
Because it's not the official record, I think they'd have a lot of trouble making that argument because it's not a business record of the agency. So I worry a little less about that threat. I haven't had an issue with that. I mean, I think I compare it to the practices that has happened in the prior 18 years of my experience where we didn't have any virtual recordings of any meetings, basically pre-COVID. And so I've never really had an occasion where we required the kind of footage. And again, the only thing that is official of the district is the minutes anyway. So the video footage would only be useful if there was a crime being committed or or there was a disturbance of the meeting. And again, I think, we'd have other official means of addressing that. So I don't worry about it that much.
well, the last 6 months, we have had some issues with behavior in the room. So I'm just concerned that we're making this change. So a lot of the changes we're making are at the behest of PSBA, but then this one's not at the behest of PSBA. So I'm trying to understand, why are we taking their advice on most things but not on this one?
This one, we're following exactly what we've done in terms of our procedures. The language change does not change our practice. Because we currently, in our retention schedule, we have always destroyed those videos when the minutes have been approved. So the wording changes. What it does is it ties the board, should you ever decide as a board or future boards, you'd have to change policy, not the records retention schedule, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does make sense.
And then finally, recording devices and cameras. Again, Mrs. Martin mentioned we used it, formerly had a constituent who video meetings. It's allowable. This simply says you could authorize some rules for that.
Mr. Cole, I should say that the show must have been boring.
Have we established any reasonable rules ever? Have we felt the need to do that?
And for citizens and recording devices,
Has there ever been an issue with that?
It's never been an issue. Yeah.
Have you seen any issues with that we should be?
I've never seen issues. I mean, I've been in many districts where there are 7, 8 news media outlets, and typically a director of communications or the administrator facilitates the placements of video cameras if there's multiple of those to ensure that they're not disrupting the meeting and they're not blocking the view of citizens or the ability of the board to conduct their business. And I've never seen any issue with making those arrangements, and most major news entities, as well as citizens, tend to comply with, you can't disrupt the meeting, you can't disrupt the flow of public comment.
So you don't think it's it's necessary for us to go down that?
I've seen some pretty wild board meetings, and I have never seen that be an issue, but let's knock on wood together.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this is a heftier policy for your consideration. It's not your run-of-the-mill policy. It really drives home the restrictive nature of a presiding officer or solicitor under very specific items that you could shut down public comment.
I'm okay with the changes. I'm kind of used to it anyways.
Any other questions on 903? Hearing none, I'll backtrack to 006 as it does dovetail with 903. 006 is several pages in before we see a recommended change. These are internal administrative recommendations. PSBA did not recommend any specific changes in 006. This is administration identifying that we have overlap between the two because of how we structured our policy currently. So here, I'm recommending the same change to add "and finance as necessary" for the 4th Thursday of the month. I will look at Mrs. Martin's comment about making sure we're consistent in 006 and 903 on where we list municipality versus address when they call in, but this changes to the recommended language for a sign-up sheet for committees that we place out currently on the table this evening. There's where I think you're asked for consistency. We have the "are asked to call" instead of "must." And again, this next section is, again, very rare on items added to the agenda after public comment, because new law really stymies that. It's very rare that you have the ability as a board to add an agenda item after the 24-hour notice of the agenda goes public. But should there be a need, we have an issue that you have to add something, you must offer another public comment period.
I know some boards do 2 separate comment periods, one where they're commenting on the agenda and one where they comment on anything. Is there any value to exploring having that option? Is that beneficial in any way? I've just seen that done many other places and I didn't know if that's...
Sure. We haven't gone there because of our structure being such that we have a regular voting meeting where public comment precedes any action of the board. We follow it with committees, which gives each constituent, like for tonight, 3 additional committee opportunities to speak.
So you feel like that's...
I believe this board gives ample opportunity for our stakeholders to provide comment. You are correct.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I was just, I've been exposed to how it's done differently and I didn't know if that's anything that we should do.
If we had a practice of saying to that is not spoken to tonight, you may not speak about that topic, probably something to consider, but that's not been our practice. We've allowed our stakeholders to generally speak on topics that are before the board or in general. So those are the only changes for 006 that are being proposed for you. Any questions on 006? Okay, this gets faster. Those were the 2 in depth. 103 is simply not simply, a significant policy, but a minor change. Welcome to the Palmyra Area School District, Dr. James Miller. We are looking at making a change in who our compliance monitor is. Mike Friends has served in that capacity. We believe organizationally it just makes sense to have Dr. Miller serve in that as a pupil service. It's more embedded with the student. If we have issues in 103, it's not been personnel related. It's typically a student involved issue that Mr. Miller would be more adept at providing any guidance and compliance monitoring for with our principals. So that is literally the only change in the entire policy. We're required, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're required to list names of those officers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I mean, I think your non-discrimination notices in your handbooks also have it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's typically you wouldn't put the name of the personnel in a policy, but I believe this one we're required to identify.
I think minimally the position, I think most people do list the names because they're just reflecting what's also on every other district notice because you want it to be a specific email address. And I think that is absolutely the best way to do it. In fact, this was on my list to tell you to update and you've already done it. So I'm pretty impressed.
Awesome. Assignment within district, 206 is the next policy. Why are we doing this one? It's a topic that's pertinent and it hasn't been looked at in Palmyra since 2006. So here we are. I might ask Dr. Setlock to help me with this one as she worked in great detail on this policy. She worked with Stock and Leader on this policy. So this speaks to how students are assigned within the district. again, it speaks to attendance areas. We're pretty unique. Most schools have very precise attendance areas, and students that live in this neighborhood go to that elementary school. And it doesn't work for us. We're unique in having 4 elementary schools all within basically 2 miles of one another. If we tried to do geographic neighborhoods, we would have schools that would far exceed their capacity and schools that would be under their capacity. That we've had to work to maintain a balance. But that's how we do it. Those are our attendance areas. But policy speaks to, the board could review that at any time. The administration would be responsible for making recommendations. Again, clearly states that no discrimination shall occur in assigning students to a school. So again, we look at home address of the student as a first key area or parameter for assigning a school. We periodically look at how we're doing things. As an example, we're trying with bus driver shortages, we're trying to reduce the amount of students that need a transfer bus because we need to make sure we have that ability to transfer. So some changes with this policy, that's a good example of how we review our own practices and regulations. We look at safety of student transport and travel, convenience and access to schools, financial administrative efficiency. The big one in red, we're making sure that's spelled out there, current school enrollment. We do our best to try to maintain relatively equal class sizes. And that's where historically, if we have 21 students in a first grade classroom in every building, and but one building we're at 19, we would always move students to where they would have 19. Or if it was 19 and this was 20, you would go here, so it'd be even at 20. That might be where instead of going from 19 and 20, maybe we go to 21 and 19. We don't get too discrepant, but we have to start looking at it. It can't necessarily be equal as we're running into problems with transfer of students. But we do our best to maintain that balance. I would not let that get out of that balance. Again, we assign a student to a school other than one designated for that attendance area when there's an exception that's justified by circumstances.
Bernie?
Yes.
Can I interrupt you just 1 second? Is there any language within our teachers' contracts that would pertain to discrepancy of class sizes between teachers? That would come back to the contract?
I do not believe so. As I sit here before you, my quick answer would be no.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Again, building administration, building principals have the responsibility of assigning students to classrooms. Grouping for instruction, again, talking about how, nothing new now, how we work students in, we try to keep a balance of students in an elementary classroom. Equal male-female, equal, we don't have all high students in one class and that they're all heterogeneously grouped is basically what that paragraph speaks to. Again, we have families that'll move from one section of our district to the other, and we have language that speaks to that. The student remaining in that former school and will provide transportation, working with the parent guardian if they request for the student to attend the new school. We'll look at that and make those changes as appropriate, given this policy.
You have a lot of parents that request changes, does that become an issue at all?
We say a lot, but we do have requests.
But it's manageable, do you feel like?
It has been. One of the challenges we have that we're seeking to rectify is we'll have a family in April or May request to move from building A to building B. Historically, we've looked at that. Here's our enrollment to date. Yes, we can make that happen. The challenge we have is now we have multiple families move in that geographic region where they could walk across the street to Pine, for example. Well, now our Pine numbers are higher because we accommodated all these changes, and the student that lives right across the street, we're putting on a bus to go to Forge. Through this, we're through policy and procedures looking at holding those requests and making decisions in July. so that most of our enrollments occurred, we can assess, because it seems silly that we have a child living across the street from a school, and we don't have room in that school because we allowed others to make those changes earlier. Still looking at it and allowing it, but allowing our enrollment to settle before we make some of those decisions. Again, in many of those cases, students, families take the responsibility of transporting if they've asked for one of those exceptions. This policy always speaks to twins, predominantly administration, staff provide input, but the parent typically decides if they have multiples, twins or multiples, that they can decide that they want children in the same classroom or two separate. And we work with parents through those decisions every year. Again, language that we provide certain services only in certain buildings. So an elementary student who needs emotional support related services, again, they're services, it's not a place. So you can provide emotional support services in any location. However, if the services are such that only our emotional support classroom that's at Northside can provide, students are transferred to Northside. That's one example. So that is that policy recommendation in a nutshell. We're very unique. And Stockton Leader was heavily involved with Dr. Setlock in this review as well.
I have to say, I came from a walking district, our district. We had many elementary schools, and this was very similar to how they handled it. And that was the question I asked, because there were a lot of parents a lot of times asking, because it was so many schools within such a close distance to change. And I like how you've handled that to extend it to kind of the end of your enrollment to help with a lot of that.
Questions? These next four literally are incredibly quick. The legislature made some changes. They basically have removed the Office of Safe Schools and all the operations that fell under that under PDE and transferred that over to PCCD, and it's literally language changes that speak to that. So on page 2, for example, it is, and I'll cite back, no longer do we submit our reports to the Office of Safe Schools. We submit an annual school safety and security incidents report. It's not saying where it's going, it's what it is. And that is the predominant change. It's no longer the Office of Safe Schools, it's to request a PDE by July 31st. Other changes throughout are literally, our policy listed the name Juul. Well, that's one of how many brands of an e-cigarette. It takes out any specific there and just speaks to tobacco product and removes any reference to a specific manufacturer. So I'm happy to go through all 4 of those, but those are the changes throughout. 2 of them are student-related policies, 2 of them personnel-related policies.
Okay, thank you. Okay, substitute rate changes.
These are just substitute rates. The daily substitute rate is something we discussed during the budget process and was included as one of the additions. The other substitute rates that are noted there are based on what the daily substitute rate is, so they changed in accordance with that as well. All of that was within the budget information that we presented. The other one is support staff substitutes. We do need and bring in substitutes for not only teachers but support staff as well. This is just the board noting that we have a substitute rate. The rates that are noted there are the starting salaries from the contract for each of those normal areas. So starting custodial salary is $15.33. The substitute rate, we're using the same rates, and that follows through for all of this.
Okay, PSBA renewal.
address this one. This will answer one of Mr. Clee's earlier questions. What do we spend a year on PSBA membership services? So there, we are currently an all-access package member, and you see the price point there, $17,319. We have one add-on that we currently are subscribed to, and that's their administrative regulations annual updates. That is an add-on to the policy service that we belong to. So the membership dues for next year, PSBA are just over $18,000.
What were they last year? Do they go up significantly every year?
Actually reduced a little
They
bit.
did?
Last year, the all accesses amount was $17,566, so just a small decrease there. The administrative regulations, I think might be a different product that we paid for or offered. Last year was about $2,100, so 905 is significantly less than that.
As it's now just as things change, they provide that.
Okay. Health and safety plan.
The 6-month requirement, we're still hanging on to ESSER dollars, so we have to show that we reviewed it. Do you have any questions?
Looks great.
So when are we gonna be done with the ESSER dollars?
ESSER funds will be expended here at the end of June 30.
Okay,
Yes,
that's
we
what I
have
thought.
until September 30. We will expend our ESSER $3 have been expended as we conclude this fiscal year.
So this will be the last time we have to do this, or we have to do it one more time?
I don't know the answer to that, is we'll have a year of all of the auditing, all of the end of grant reporting, so I'm anticipating at least once a month, 2 more times.
Okay. And that brings us to public comment. Anybody jumping in there?
For this 2024-2025 year, is it not yet possible to assess the PA School Boards Coalition as an alternative to the PSBA? Is that not, are they not up and running to be considered an alternative?
They're not credentialed yet.
They're not credentialed. I thought that's what you said earlier. Okay, and so.
So they have a monopoly, pretty much. I mean, we don't have, am I speaking correctly? We don't have a choice at this point, we don't believe.
I think we learned why they're well funded too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Okay, then the announcement of the executive session.
The board will meet in executive session immediately following tonight's meeting to converse on contractual items and evaluate you for commissioned officers of the district and to consult and gain advice from the solicitor. Thank you.